Welcome to the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. I am your host, Ness Jones, and we'll be deep diving into all things separation anxiety. But before we get started, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another one. And don't forget, if you are interested in joining my easy step-by-step training program to resolve separation anxiety in your dog, you'll find the link in the show notes. Now let's get started. In this episode, we are going to be trying to delve into what your dog is trying to tell you. This is a very, very important episode. When we're doing our training, when we're doing our threshold assessment, we've talked about the thresholds where we might say that's the line in the sand where the dog starts panicking. But before that, we might see a lot of behaviors, a lot of dog body language, canine body language that tell us that the dog is struggling, is starting to feel uncomfortable, maybe is just holding it together before they tip over the threshold. So if we know our dog, if we understand what they are trying to tell us with their body language, we can stop that from happening. We don't want them to go over threshold. Go back to episode 3 if you don't understand what thresholds are, because it's very important to understand what a threshold is so we can stop our dog going over threshold. We want to keep them under threshold in the safe zone. And by safe zone, I mean where they feel safe about being by themselves. Then we use gradual exposure therapy, and desensitization to those safe abscesses, increasing the time in tiny little wee increments so the dog doesn't notice. But to do that, we have to have a solid understanding of canine body language, but remembering also that just like us humans, they're all different. So what one dog does to show that it's uncomfortable, another dog may not do it. It might do something else. Now, you will also hear me in this episode talk a lot about context. I hope perhaps that by the end you'll be rolling your eyes because it is very, very important. Context is describes to us, or it tells us whether it is serious, whether the dog is really, really concerned, really, really just on that border, or perhaps it's completely unrelated to anxiety or stress. So let's dig into some of these. This list is not exhaustive. There will be other ones. And again, it's so important to know your dog. Actually, before I start talking about some of these signs, I'd like you to really start observing your dog. It's a really, really fun exercise, incredibly fun. In fact, what I should do is a book. I'm holding it up for those watching on YouTube. Hopefully you can see that, but I will put it also in the show notes. It's called On Talking Terms with Dogs, Calming Signals. And it was written quite some time ago by Turid Rugaas. And it's such an important book. So it's basically the things that dogs do to help themselves calm down. And you can take that out on the road. So you'll be able to say, maybe you're walking down the street with your dog and it sees another dog. You can look at its body language and say, I now understand how my dog feels when it sees another dog. I've got a pretty good idea what it's thinking and feeling. To start understanding your dog better, you need to start observing them and being present. So what do they look like when you're moseying around the house? Everybody's nice and relaxed. Everybody's chilled out. What are they doing? What signs do they have that they're quite showing you that they're happy and relaxed? Or perhaps they hear something that makes them stiffen. What else are they doing when that happens? Start observing your dog. What do they look like when they're relaxed? What do they look like when they're playing? What do they look like when they're tense, maybe anxious? And do they have a pattern? I think I talked about in one of the other episodes, Slinky, the mini fox terrier. She had a very, very clear pattern. So did Fergus the greyhound. He had a very, very clear pattern. So we could identify that pattern leading up to maybe the over threshold moment, and we can break that pattern and get back inside before the over threshold moment happens. Very important. So let's talk about lip licking or lip darting. It's when the dog darts its tongue out. So the context here is, did the dog just eat something, or perhaps it just drank some water? even, some dogs, when they sleep and they wake up, they, I don't know, you probably do it too. I know I do. If I've been sleeping with my mouth open, your mouth gets quite dry sometimes, and you kind of licking your lips a little bit. So there's that as well. So there's a bit of context there as well. But it can also mean that they're processing something, they're thinking about something, but it may mean that they're bordering on anxiety as well. So what is the dog doing? So I know my dog, my girl, she if she sees something in the distance and she's thinking about it, she might dart her tongue out. She's not anxious. She's a very robust, confident dog, but she's processing it. She's thinking about it. Is that something I should be bothered about or interested in, or should I not be? So it's very clear to me what's going on there. But some dogs do it when they are suffering from anxiety. So you just need to know your dog and understand the context. Some of these signs that a dog might be stressed, I'm not worried too much about them if they're in isolation by themselves. It's when we see more than one, or we see a systematic building of, we've got this sign, this sign, this sign, this sign, and we can clearly see the dog's getting more and more agitated. But lip licking on its own, just in an isolated incidents, don't worry too much about that. It's if you start seeing other signs, and also that it is definitely based in anxiety, not something else. So the next one is yawning. Now, obviously, if the dog has just woken up, it might yawn. If it's feeling sleepy, it might yawn. Turid Rugaas, in her book, she talks about yawning as a calming signal. So it's something that a dog might do to try to calm itself down. It can also be called a stress sign, a stress yawn as well. So again, did the dog just wake up? Is it sleepy? Is it trying to calm itself down? If you think about something like stretching is kind of the same as well. It's like I hold a lot of tension in my shoulders, and if I'm trying to get rid of that, I might shrug. For a dog, that might be like a shake off. So trying to get rid of that tension. A shake off looks like a dog that's got in the water, that's had a swim perhaps, and they get out of the water and they shake off. You would have seen it also when your dog rises. If they've been lying down for a while, they'll do a shake off. So that's not based in stress. That's just shrugging it off sort of thing. But it can be tension there. It can mean there's tension there and they're trying to shake it off. So just be aware of that as well. Yeah. So you observe your dog. So this is one of the things that that is really interesting to note for, when you're at home. So if your dog has been lying down, does it do a shake off when it gets up? That's just really good information to have. What's my dog's normal? So if you know what your dog's normal is when they're relaxed, then if they're doing something abnormal, then we can say, well, is that because they're feeling anxious? Another one is scratching or licking. Now, scratching, it can be a displacement behavior. You see cats do it a lot. Cats are masters at using scratching as a displacement behavior when they, maybe they're walking along something and they fall off and they're like, oh, nothing to see here, scratch, scratch, scratch. I think it's quite amusing the way when they do it. But dogs do it too. So is the dog uncomfortable? But does it have an itch? Does it have allergies? Is that why it's scratching? So that context, again, is important. Kevin, who I mentioned in an earlier episode, he was a little staffy. There was one, I was watching one of their training videos, and they were on an hour's absence, which is a good chunk of time. And he spent most of it licking his paw. And I was watching this video thinking, oh my goodness, why don't they get back inside? He's obviously suffering from some, underlying anxiety. Is it going to build up? Is it going to escalate? When I did get to talk to them about it, they said, no, he's got grass allergies. It was a seasonal grass allergy. And that was the only reason he was licking. So, but of course, if a dog is licking themselves and scratching because they're uncomfortable, we have to be really careful that it doesn't lead to self-harm, especially with the licking, that lick, 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 and then it becomes, gets worse and worse and worse. So, but yeah, just be aware of the context for that as well. Now, sniffing is also a displacement behavior. Is the dog unsure? Is it feeling uncomfortable? But there's plenty of other reasons why a dog might sniff as well. So has there been some food dropped on the ground? Something like that. Or is there just an interesting smell on the ground? Or are they trying to find out how much of your odor is left in the air so they can get a read on perhaps how long you've been gone for? So sniffing is a really interesting one. And it could be for a variety of reasons. So again, know your dog, know your dog. Playing, I think I mentioned playing in an earlier episode. So yes, I did. So playing, I always say play and panic can't coexist in the same world, except there's always an exception, isn't there? So is the dog having fun? Which is good if it is. If you're outside, if you're not home, and you're having your dog is having an absence of you not being there, and they're playing, well, that's brilliant. That's a perfect outcome, provided it's not downloading stress into the play. So is it playing in its normal happy way that you know, and you know what that looks like because you've been observing your dog? Or is there more intensity in the play? Is it more stressed play? And I think that can tip over to destruction, obviously destruction of toys or destruction of the couch or what have you. So what is the intensity? Again, it's so important to know your dog. What is their normal? What does their normal play look like? So we can identify if that playing is actually based in panic. Digging into soft furnishings, the couch or around the door area. Sometimes I've had clients report before they started training with me that their dog digs around the door area into the carpet and they've made a bit of a mess of the carpet around the exit point. Or some dogs will dig into the soft furnishings and things like that. So again, this comes under that, is the dog downloading stress or is it bored, especially with teenage dogs? Is it bored, doesn't know what to do, so it's digging into the furniture, destroying the furniture. So we do that context again. I'm going to keep saying it, context, context, context. It's really, really important to know what it is because things like panting as well. So panting is one. So, lots of dogs that are really stressed will do lots of panting. It's usually accompanied by drool as well, plenty of drool. But has the dog been running around? Is it a hot day? Or it could be even winter, but the house is heated and it's just too hot for the dog, especially if they've been running around and playing or something. So again, the context, is the dog stressed or is it hot? We've talked about the shake-off, stretching, and we've talked about stretching. So again, is it releasing tension or did it just wake up? Did it just exercise? Has it been resting? Dogs will stretch when they get up, same as they do the shake-off when they get up. So again, the context. Paw lift, so dogs might lift up their paw when they're unsure or uncomfortable. My girl, she'll lift it up for a variety of reasons. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, she was lifting it up because she'd actually hurt her paw. So she had a sore paw. But sometimes she will lift it up if I've got a treat and she wants the treat and she will lift it up. And other times she'll lift it up when she's a bit curious about something. So she's, what's going on here? And she'll lift up her paw. So are they uncomfortable and unsure? Are they curious about something? Did they hurt themselves or do they want something? Some other signs, drooling, of course. So if your dog is drooling, again, did they just drink water? Actually, I had a dachshund client. Oh my goodness, she sent me a video. Now, I must say, don't ever try to get video of your dog stressed out, anxious, having a panic attack. If you've already got the video, that's different. But if you are trying to do this training properly, you don't want to have video. You don't want your dog to rehearse behaviors like that, because if you're taking film of your dog panicking, then they're obviously over threshold, and again, that's going to undermine your training. So but she had taken video of her dog, or actually she'd gone out. This is before we started training, but she'd gone out, and every time she came out, she put the dog on a crate, and she took a video of what she came back to, which was rivers, literally rivers of drool. It was shocking how bad it was. She was mopping it up, and I mean, we're talking about a dachshund. They're not the biggest dogs. And it was just, it wasn't water. You could tell it wasn't water. It was that slimy kind of thing that slobber has. And there was a lot of it. So that dog was really, really scared. So drooling, again, provided the context is dog's not hot or hasn't just had a drink of water, all those things. Dogs that become anxious before you leave. Again, we talked about that. We're going to talk about that more in later episodes, but they see, for example, something that triggers them, like that your keys, and they become anxious before you leave. Tucked tails, flattened ears. Now, dogs with pointy ears, they're a lot easier to read because you can kind of see what they're doing, which direction they're going. But with floppy-eared dogs, it's a little bit harder. So you might find that they flatten on the head a little bit more, and maybe they'll pull back a little bit more. Again, it's about knowing what your dog's normal is, so you can see when it's not. Hiding is another one. Freezing. I think I talked about freezing in another episode. So freezing, not just standing around, but literally frozen like a statue, usually at the door or window or something like that. Whale eye, so that's where you can see more of the whites of the eye. Just be aware that some dogs naturally have more of the white of the eye showing. A good example of that would be a pug. But whale eye, wide eye, so it's just, where you can see more of the whites of the eyes. But again, of course, if your dog is facing forward but looking to the side, you will see more of the whites of the eyes. So just be aware of that and take it into account. So other things just to be aware of. So tail position, tension in the body. What are the eyes doing? Is there tightness around the mouth? Sometimes you can see quite a bit of tightness around the mouth, maybe a furrowed brow. The position of the ears. What are the ears doing? And even with the back, so you might see a roach in the back, like a little hump. And watch for if you can, sometimes it's hard to capture on video when you're looking on a phone, but, other sides breathing more heavily. Is there more kind of that sort of tension breathing as opposed to a nice, calm, relaxed breath? So there's a lot of things. Again, this not an exhaustive list. There will be other signs. It's for you to start observing your dog, be present with your dog. And as I said, it's a lot of fun. Like, I actually, very, very fun exercise I did with my Rottweiler and my Malinois. This is a few years ago. We had a great big backyard, and I filmed them playing for a minute and a half. It was literally a minute and a half. And what I observed while they were playing, there was lots of good stuff going on. They were play bowing and doing lookaways and all sorts of other things. But I put it onto my computer on a big screen, and I went through it frame by frame, like half a second at a time or a second at a time, and broke it down. And gosh, there was so much going on. It was incredible. It's a really fun exercise. So I encourage you to do that, and just go through it really, really slowly. And you'll see things that you can't see in the moment when like I could not see things. I missed so much because it happened so quick, but your dogs can see it because they understand each other's body language. So just get in there, start it. Like I've said it already, I've said it 2 or 3 times now. Be present with your dog, start observing them. What do they do? What's their normal? So we can tell when they're feeling anxious. And that will enable us, when you're doing your training, if you can see that there's more and more stress signs building up and that they're probably holding it together, then you can get back in before they go over the threshold. You have been listening to Ness Jones on the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes to learn more about my programs and how I can help you with tailored training. Until next time.